So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming here. Although some of you, I think, you did not have a choice because you were given a card. But if you did choose, thank you for coming here. So this roundtable discussion is going to focus on the UNESCO Strategy for TVET, aspirations and realities. So for those of you that do not know me, my name is Muscat and I work as a project manager at UNESCO-UNEVOC, and I will be moderating this session together with my colleague, Natalie, also a project officer at UNESCO-UNEVOC. And I would like to mention that we also have the online participants, and another colleague of mine, Priscilla, will be bringing in the questions, the comments by the online participants. So thank you for being here with us. So just to introduce the objectives of this roundtable discussion. Basically, in 2022, UNESCO launched the UNESCO Strategy for TVET for the years 2022 to 2029. So we are now 2 years down the line. And we would like to take this opportunity that we have TVET stakeholders from different regions in the world to get your perspectives on this strategy. Because of course, there is a vision, there are aspirations, but what about what is happening on the ground? And this comes at the right time for us at UNESCO-UNEVOC because we just launched the medium-term strategy for the years 2024 to 2026, and we need to understand what else we need to do to make sure that the vision translates into reality, because that is what we want to do, to make TVET more meaningful for the students. So just an overview, first of all, who has read the strategy for TVET here? Good, 1, 2, 3, 4, good. You have read it, Priscilla, as well. I hope that you did. Good. It is a very important... No, you will not be tested. No, you will not be tested. So in reality, you could have just all raised your hand. No, it is a very important document because it is what the UNESCO member states should be focusing on for the next few years. And the main priorities for TVET for these 3 years are based on the individuals, economies, and societies. And if we see this, we need to have TVET systems that enable TVET systems to develop skills for all individuals to work, learn, and live. And it's really good to see that we're also talking about the importance of having a student also supporting them to live, because life is not just about work. And unfortunately, when it comes to TVET, the narrative is that we're preparing students for employment. That is very important, yes, but not only. There is also life. Then we need to develop skills for inclusive and sustainable economies. So yes, economies that are thriving, but economies that include everyone, okay? That's really important. And finally, developing skills for inclusive and peaceful societies. So if we go to the first priority area, the skills for individuals to learn, work and live, we find 2 thematic areas here. The importance of having flexible lifelong learning pathways. And we mentioned that, actually Arno referred to this earlier today, when in TVET we don't have just the traditional students that are coming at the age of 14, 15, whatever, but we have students that are returning to education at the age of 30, 40, whatever. So importance of having flexibility. Also, developing targeted measures for inclusion and gender equality. And I would like to mention that the strategy gives priority to inclusive excellence. And you can see this in the main thematic areas of this. Second priority area, we have the skills for inclusive and sustainable economies. And here we have 5 thematic areas. So the transition to digital and green economies, the dual transition is really important. Addressing youth unemployment, enhancing STEM, entrepreneurial skills, 21st century skills, supporting TVET teachers and institutions to foster quality, innovation, and excellence. And it's really good to see thematic areas that are addressing like the person that is in direct contact with the student during the journey in education. And then reinforcing governance and unlocking investment. If we go to the third priority area, here we talk about integrating rights-based education for global and participatory citizenship, and also promoting TVET institutions as places for social integration, cohesion, and green citizenship. So the TVET institutions should be what we aspire society out there to be. And I think focusing on peaceful societies is even more important now, considering what is happening around us. I made reference to the UNESCO-UNEVOC medium-term strategy for the years 2024 to 2026. And this, of course, has to align with the UNESCO strategy for TVET. And once again, in this medium-term strategy, equity and inclusion are giving priority. I can just mention the BILT project as an example where we gather TVET stakeholders together, learn from each other. In this particular conference, it's about inclusive excellence to improve TVET systems across the globe. And with that, I can give the floor to Natalie to introduce the guiding questions for this discussion.
Thank you, Kenny. Yeah, so as usual in this type of sessions, of course, we have guiding questions along which to structure the discussion. And of course, we want to look at enabling conditions and barriers. And the overarching question is, how is the UNESCO strategy for TVET translating into actions that empower the learner in TVET? So when we set up, or when we were planning this session, we were thinking, yeah, it's good, but we need something a bit more concrete, because we cannot look at those very high-level 3 priority areas that Kenny just introduced and then try to answer those questions. It's a bit something missing in between. So what we try to do is to identify just 2 quotes from the strategy a bit further back in the document. And those are the aspects that we would like to discuss with you. And we have another slide with the guiding questions and the quotes, so you can keep looking at them. But just to take a moment to digest this quote. The strategy says, TVET must offer lifelong learning opportunities for both women and men, with individualized and adaptive pedagogies, flexible learning modalities, pathways across types of education and training and across activity sectors, recognition, validation and accreditation of non-formal and informal learning, career guidance and counseling. So there's a lot of very concrete measures and aspirations in this sentence. And when we move on to the discussion, maybe you can pick 1 or 2 of them and match them with your experience in your context as a regulator or as a TVET provider, as a student. Or as a policymaker. And the second quote that we picked is very related to a space as we find ourselves in right now. TVET institutions, architectures, spaces, timetables, and student groupings should be redesigned to encourage and enable individuals to work together and to become exemplars of social integration and cohesion, sustainability and carbon neutrality. So I think we're in a wonderful place that sets a good example for such a space. But again, take it as a starting point for your reflections and your input in this session. So we will leave this slide up. It has the 2 quotes and the guiding questions. And I will try to capture your input on these post-its and try to group and sort it a bit to give a summary in the end. Let's see how well that goes. And I'll hand over to Kenny to moderate the discussion and invite our recruited input.
Thank you, Natalie, and I think we can start the discussion. And before coming here, we approached a few of you because we would like to have input from student representatives, from TVET practitioner representatives, from national bodies, from ministries, Once we have these inputs, then we continue the discussion with all of you. And a gentle reminder to the online participants that Priscilla is already looking at the comments and bringing these comments to the discussion. So I would like to start with Arno Schroyen. You already met him, an executive committee member of European Students' Union. So what do you think? How is the UNESCO strategy for TVET like making a difference to TVET students in your opinion? And what needs to be done in order to improve?
Well, I think it's those types of documents are interesting because they give, at least they give a sense of idea for example, policymakers or higher education institutions that don't really have an idea or where to go or where to start. It gives on that a first step into the work, and especially regarding inclusion in TVET. Inclusion is a very difficult topic because it's very broad. It can be very, very difficult to know where to start because there are so many groups that feel pressure from society to get into higher education or in education just simply like that. So I think it helps them on that. I think one of the general barriers to put something like that in place is funding, because money is always very, very difficult, and it's very important to then give institutions, education institutions, the proper funding to be able to put all of this in place and to have something very, I mean, it's very nice to ask institutions to do stuff, but if they don't have the capacity to do it, it's very, very difficult. I think something, and I discussed this a bit earlier during the break, and I have the feeling that I didn't see that much in the report, is also giving TVET a better reputation generally. It's often presented as, you cannot go to uni because you're not smart enough, so just go and do TVET. So at least you're doing something. So that's something on that can be interesting. And I think something that's also very important, and I already talked to you, Kenny, about it, is especially in higher education for VET, sometimes it's often people coming from, and it's very good that they are coming from the professional and the private market and coming with their knowledge, but teaching is a professional job, and often it's missing that have proper training to become also a teacher and not just presenting their perspective. And especially regarding inclusivity, and that's from my own experience as a hotel management student, in hospitality, there is a lot of sexism and homophobia still present. And when the teachers bring it to the classroom as well, which happened to me, I had a lot of homophobic comments during my studies. It also becomes a problem, and it's because also my teacher didn't have any training on how to be a teacher and what is it to be inclusive. So I think those are some ways and also some barrier that still exist to be able to reach excellency and inclusivity, also in how the teacher are behaving towards the students that are there. And then there's also the problem with all the students that are not there yet. So, I mean, having free education helps a lot. And also looking into into minority groups is also very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Arno. I think you presented us with very important points, of course, starting with the complexity of inclusion, because we can talk a lot, yes, about inclusion, but let's acknowledge that this is complex. The importance of funding, the importance of improving the status of TVET, and also preparing better teachers for TVET. Thank you, Arno. Let us move to the second input from Mary Rose Formosa. She comes from the Malta College of Art, Science and Technology, and she works as a student liaison manager, which allows her to meet like the students who are really at the periphery of the college, not just society, but even at the college. So Mary Rose, your input.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I prepared a lot of beautiful things to share with you, but they've been said very well by Arno. I couldn't have put it better, because maybe as adults and as practitioners in TVET, we can never, ever share the students' experience, because they are sharing it. They are living the experience, so we need to listen to them. And that's what he mentioned as well, which is like makes me, I might as well go home. What I'd like to add, because he mentioned as well about the participation of students, which is token. But what I'd like to add, first of all, the UNESCO strategy puts it's learner-centered. So that's how we need to be. And we have to go beyond just saying that. What's important, they identify TVET as a context for equity. And equity brings into the inclusiveness that we need to practice with students. Maybe we do it with students. Some students are luckier than others. But what I would like to add to what Arno shared as well, that disabilities, learning difficulties, such as dyslexia, they move to the workplace as well. Okay, they don't go away, like he said as well, but they move to the context of the workplace. So we are always preparing the student for industry, but we need to prepare industry for the students as well. Okay, employers need to know the diversity and the richness that diversity brings with it, with different types of students. I'd like to pick one, Kenny, just one, because you mentioned enabling and barriers. And I feel that educators can fit in both. Okay, educators not only in TVET, they can be enablers, they can be barriers. Just like they need to update pedagogies for the digital and green transition, they can be barriers if they stick to their usual way of teaching, to the default lesson that they are used to take it to giving students, so it's like a one-size-fits-all. So that is something else. And the same with industry. Industry, I am going to conclude with this. Our CEO had a conference 2 weeks ago, and he said industry needs to move from being stakeholders to shareholders in TVET. And that makes a big difference into how learners will be able to transition without any problems to industry. Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you, Mary Rose, for your perspective. It's interesting when you say that you see the teachers as enablers, but also as barriers. And I think we need to think a lot about this, because I'm sure there is truth in that. And also when you mentioned that, yes, I have learning difficulties while I am learning, what happens when I go to the place of work? So very important to have everyone on board. Let us move to the third input, and representing national bodies. Here with us we have Dana Stroye, Deputy Director from the National Center for Technical and Vocational Education Training in Romania, which is also a UNEVOC center. So, Dana.
Thank you. So I understand that we address globally all the issues in one shot. So yeah, my first idea on being the body that has a national responsibility on developing strategies and proposing to the ministries the strategies and how to deal with all these aspects that UNESCO strategy mentions. I would refer more to our strategic approach, how we deal it in Romania to address the recommendation, the UNESCO recommendation on our national context. So as the first idea here was to embed that in a lifelong learning perspective, we realized VET in Romania was quite fragmented. So the initial VET and the continuous VET and non-formal and informal learning, and all these parts, areas of that were distinctively approached. Even we have distinct ministries, Ministry of Education with initial VET, Ministry of Labor with continuous VET, that led to very separate approaches, and we realized that that's not a solution. So in the last 2 years, somehow in the time that the UNESCO strategy evolved, we have found a common ground to integrate all our approaches in a lifelong learning. So we created pathways to enable a trainee to go from initial VET to continuous VET. We introduced microcredits in continuous VET. We now are approaching to have the same qualification in all kinds of areas. So this is something really important for us, and we realize important of embedding initial VET in a lifelong learning perspective. Another issue important for us was to support the learners in initial VET was that for many years in a row we considered crucial to develop professional competencies. But currently we realize that more than professional competencies, we have to focus on transversal skills, because those are so important, especially for in an individualized approach. So that's why now we embedded and included these transversal competencies more clearly in our qualifications descriptions, and we are focusing more in our pedagogy to approach them. In terms of enabling conditions, what we have done, we realize that only if you have strong leaders of VET schools and leaders who know how to deal with all these problems, you can strive for both inclusiveness and excellence. So what we have done is to develop the capacity of leaders to drive innovation and change. So we develop specific programs for our managers of VET schools to deal with innovation and inclusiveness, so to be aware. So only if they are on that side, they can teach to others how to do it, and they can manage the school in the respective sense. So we think that's important. Another idea that we approached in enabling conditions for translating UNESCO strategy into action was to support networking and sharing knowledge at different levels. And actually what we have done, we have created networks of VET schools on the same in the sector. For example, now we have national networks of schools who prepare students in agricultural. They all form a network with a platform where they can have peer learning, peer review. We support face-to-face peer reviews, face-to-face peer learning, but also online meetings. And it was been extremely efficient and effective to give them this kind of environment where they can discuss on specific sector problems. Just 3 more ideas. We have, in terms of barriers, low attractiveness of that. Yes, that's a problem in Romania, and I interestingly understood that it became also a problem in countries who have a long tradition in dual VET. Even so, they also are starting to face it. And on that key, we see 2 problems: the social environment, including potential family and peers, and for that we are addressing the parents and the society through campaigns. But also the low attractiveness of that due to the fact that it doesn't lead to, in Romania, is a perception that any child of a family should go to higher education. And it was a feeling that that doesn't lead to higher education. And what we have done, and we actually have also a poster, because it's like the key development of Romania, is that we developed a full dual training educational pathways leading to even level 8 of dual VET, which is great, because now we see that students and parents are more interested in going there, knowing that there is no barrier at all to go up to the highest level possible. And the last idea is that, we realized that we can't have a good approach without data. So we missed forecast mechanism and insertion mechanism data on that at system level. And now we have developed through a very high level and very a lot of budget project. We have developed a 3 mechanisms actually. A mechanism for forecast on medium and long term, a mechanism for VET insertion of VET graduates, and a mechanism for policies. And this is really something great, because now when we make a report on a strategy, we do it based on evidence. And these are the main ideas that we have done to address very operationally the strategy of UNESCO.
Thank you so much, Tana, for your input. I think you mentioned a lot of valid things. Interesting that after mentioning the teachers, now you move to the leaders, the managers and leaders in schools. So yes, these are very important stakeholders. And also the last point that you mentioned, data. And this aligns with the UNESCO conference on data for education, which was the first one that was organized recently by the UNESCO Institute for Statistics. And this point was highlighted, that how can we take informed decisions if we do not have data to support this? So let me go to the fourth input from us here, and we have Marta Weldy, who is the lead executive officer at the Labour and Social Affairs Ministry from Ethiopia.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, sorry. To translate this strategy in action to empower the TVET learner, for example, in our case, Ethiopia, one of the things is we have to develop an action plan or the implementation plan that aligns with the country policy and strategy. Because as already mentioned in the morning, the country have also their own priority area. And there is a lot of good things are listed in the UNESCO strategy of TVET. So we should have to have an implementation or an action plan to translate this action to empower the TVET learner. The other issue is to empower the TVET, the learner in TVET. We should have to work on the employment issue. Indeed, this employment issue beyond the daily bread, because the end goal that we need TVET learners in my country is to be innovative, entrepreneur, disciplined, and employed. Indeed, employed with maybe in wage or self. So we should have to focus on the employment issue also. The other things here is we should have to create an awareness also about this strategy. For example, across 5 regions, there are around 150 state members in this UNESCO-UNEVOC, let alone other stakeholders. This all TVET family knows in depth this strategy. We have to create a detailed awareness about this TVET strategy for TVET family and stakeholders. When we come to the enabling condition, for example, that I can take my country's case, Ethiopia, we have a good developed policy that mostly align with this UNESCO-UNEVOC strategy, UNESCO TVET strategy, that focuses, for example, about the flexibility issue, the lifelong learn issue. There are the educational and training policy. We have a national qualification framework. So this developed different policy documents is one of the enabling conditions. The other thing is currently in Ethiopia, the government focuses on TVET. High demand of middle-level technician is currently needed by the industry. So as per this, before 3 years, we already reestablished the structure of the education system with technical and vocational education, with job creation and employability and labor affairs. So we are always thinking that a skill is a gateway for job creation. And that is the need of our country, or the focus of our country, to be always the job to be led by skilled or competent manpower. So this is another enabling condition. When you come to the barriers, as I think mentioned by former speakers, very low involvement of public and private industries. in our policy in Ethiopia, we already put it that industry should have to lead the TVET, but not yet. Still, the involvement of the private plus the public industry is very low. So maybe this is one of the barriers for the implementation or for the translation of this strategy. The other thing is, you know, that the training system of TVET is high capital intensive. So here the very poor infrastructure of our TVET system, maybe sometimes it's a problem for a learner to come in the TVET system. I think the last point in the barrier that hinders the progress of translating is still the TVET stigma is continued. For example, in our country, we put it that the enrollment of female students to be around 50-50. For example, in different parts of the occupational standard, the number is even more than 15%. But when you come to in the engineering or hard skill part, it's very low and sometimes nil. So still the TVET stigma is there. People like to choose to join higher education than TVET. So still we should have to work to minimize such awareness. So this is my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that input from your end. Very interesting as well. You mentioned the stigma, you mentioned the different priority areas. And while you were discussing, I was questioning myself, I mean, can we really have a strategy, one strategy for all the countries? Because we have different contexts. So I think it's really difficult to make that. So let us move to the question. So you raise your hand so we can start with you. And then Priscilla will go to the online participants because I am sure that we already have some comments there. Am I right? Good. So, but let's start with you first.
So in some ways, I'd like to raise some questions and maybe also throw a few spanners in the works if I can. We often talk about the stigma and TVET, and we tend to focus on the educational sector itself rather than take a broader societal view. It's not just for these educational institutions to lift the image of TVET. It's for all of us to appreciate the people who go through the system. You know, if you push your children to be doctors and engineers and you denigrate everything else in your own household, you cannot expect the schools to then pick up the slack. We, with colleagues in Argentina, we had an idea at some point of running campaigns where we would show, say, a life in the day off and show you how many people it takes you to have a comfortable life. You know, you go and get your bread in the morning. It took a baker, it took a miller, it took a farmer, it took a lorry driver to get that bread to you. So we thought, you know, how could we run such campaigns? And I think UNESCO would be well placed maybe to even fund such work with countries in order to really bring back to our attention the importance of everyone around us. Something maybe a little bit trickier here. When it comes to the involvement of the business sector, I worked on the private sector side of this equation. And I've always found that the private sector talks a very different language. We need business cases. We need returns on investment. We don't necessarily react very well to expectations or, you know, this is a good idea type of argument. So, you know, it's one thing to say we need more private sector, but then also, how do you talk to the private sector and how do you create policy coherence that encourages their participation? We had a case again in Argentina where we had to tweak a taxation policy. You would hire trainees and basically you couldn't get rid of them at the end of their training period because it figured as being fired. So companies would be punished for letting go of trainees. So companies refuse to take them because we don't want to be penalized for letting go of our trainees at the end of their training period. And it took a small change on a small document where we had to change, like, you know, whichever box you could tick or not. I can't remember the exact terminology now. But this is the kind of work that is also required to encourage the private sector to participate. Just maybe for some background, I've worked on the Swiss and Australian sides of TVET, so we have some similar issues, but also some similar lessons to offer. And maybe one last thing, because you referred also to how many member states there are in UNESCO-UNEVOC. A lot of my experience is in a country called Myanmar, which is Burma, which, as you know, is going through an extremely tough period. In this period, all UN agencies are refusing to engage with the government at a time when this strategy is extremely needed for the country's economy, regardless of what we might think of that government. And so to what extent does UNESCO collaborate with all of its member states, and where do you actually go and help? Strategies are wonderful and policies are wonderful, but they all look great until they're implemented. You know, the detail is in the implementation, and that's where we need help. And I always feel like the countries that need it the most are left out for ideological reasons. And I feel very passionate about this, even though I know, you know, some countries, we like to categorize them into better or worse and whatnot, but we end up punishing the young people. And, you know, we can talk about inclusion, but we exclude certain countries and certain societies from the help that we could extend as the international community. So I'd just like to bring that out there. But yeah.
Thank you very much for your input. Can you say where you are coming from, so that for the context of the others?
Okay, so I started with the ITC ILO 2 weeks ago. So everything I've just said, I'll deny it. But I was with Swiss Contact before and with the Global Apprenticeship Network before that.
Thank you very much for your input, very valid comments that you mentioned. Thank you. So Priscilla, do we have comments from the participants? Good. So.
Thank you so much. Regarding question 2, we have one input, and this is from Udokang Aniti Edem from the Federal Polytechnic Offa in Nigeria, and says that I want to contribute to the second question, the frequent training of teachers or trainees, teachers and trainers, adequate funding and creating an enabling environment for teachers and trainers and learners, and that is physical and online interaction. I think this is the response to what are the enabling conditions to translate UNESCO's vision into action. So that is a great input. Thank you so much for that. And then we have 2 other questions that are more general about the UNESCO strategy. So we have one question from BIPLAB, who is asking, how can we benefit from UNESCO strategy in our marginalized TVET institution and TVET research? So that is one question. And then the next question we have is from Dr. Priscilla Disagu from Ghana, West Africa. And she's asking, I want to know what funding or projects you have in place to support organizations that provide vocational training and to individuals with autism and intellectual disability. I'm asking this because I'm a founder of an organization called Duperon Learning Center that provides vocational training to individuals with autism and intellectual disabilities in Ghana. And there's very little support for vocational organizations like our own from individuals with autism. How can I receive support? That's all. The other is intervention from Jay Dykeman, who is asking, Roberto, can you please provide me with your contact information? HVCC is currently engaging in activities in Costa Rica, and I would like to connect with you to explore potential avenues of collaboration between HVCC and INA. So he leaves his comment there. I'm just reading everything so that I don't leave anyone out. Over to you.
So thanks a lot for commenting, and please keep on commenting. We had a very difficult question. How can we benefit from the UNESCO strategy for TVET? It's not something that I can reply, provide an answer in a few seconds. First of all, I think it's the importance of being aware of it, and you made reference to this. How aware are the UNESCO member states of the strategy for TVET? So that's the first thing that we have to do. Besides that, yes, UNESCO-UNEVOC is focusing on TVET, but there are other institutions and other institutions within UNESCO that are also focusing on UNESCO. Then it would be up to the member states to contribute, to participate in the projects, like what we are doing here. As much as possible, we try to have representatives from different countries. And as you are aware, a number of you would have been sponsored to come here. Of course, funds are limited, so we try to prioritize. But this leads me to the second question. Yes, we have ideas, but how can we implement these ideas? And tomorrow we have a session precisely on this. Different funding opportunities, and we have here with us today Yvonne Janssen from Movetia, which is the Swiss counterpart of Erasmus+. Maybe you don't know that much about it, but tomorrow you will know more. There are several opportunities of capacity building that one can access. It's up to us to go out there and see what is available. But please make sure that tomorrow you follow that session. So more comments from here. So we have Isabel.
If I may, someone was questioning the UNESCO strategy as such, and I think it's very important that a well thought through strategy exists. The difficulties is of course in the implementation. And your point, let's say, on a business case, we do at BIBB the economic return of investment on dual training, and it's not our own business, but we work with Swiss and Austrian. So it's one model which is being adapted, let's say, in the three countries. And I think such an idea of business case plus data should be taken over or join the group, or we create a group, whatever, with other kinds of VET systems, also with African colleagues. I came to the idea because I wrote with a colleague for the ILO on motivating SMEs and small SMEs, so it's beyond Europe, and to see how can we bring those companies in. And then you have a lot of new questions for me, being European, coming from the colleagues from Asia and Africa. And this is such a wealth of questions you have to think through, and you bring not only your solutions, but you get also solutions from the colleagues. So it's not peer learning, it's not peer review, it's working together. I'm currently also working on the link between AQF and SADCQF, Southern African Development Community Qualification Framework, so everything around South Africa as state. And it's again, you have other questions, and I see there, so for instance, solutions on our issue on recognition of informal, non-formal learning, where I would not have an idea on how I could solve or find a kind of solution if I was not in discussion with the colleagues. So it's all behind the strategy, but you have to let people work together or give them the opportunity to work together on very concrete matters. I mean, when I see the TVET strategy and TVET institution in our system is the companies. So now I take the idea of strong leaders in TVET institutions. I'm thinking we have another way. We have to find another way. I don't want to go to the owner of SMEs and tell them they have to be strong in leadership for dual training. It's going to be difficult. But there are other issues like linking better with TVET schools. So it's also a way of strengthening this part of TVET systems. But it's forum like this where you can put some issues and gather people, which we do, of course, in under the UNESCO umbrella or BILT, but go into the depth of the systems. Well, I work a lot with Africa. Sorry, I look at you. about this informal, non-formal, and I have a question, why should it be formalized? But it's okay, it's maybe a question I should not put, but it's something I would like to discuss with the colleagues, because we have the same in our system, with of course different characteristics. But if we talk together, exchange together under the umbrella of the UNESCO strategy, then we come also to lifelong learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that input. I think it's very important when you mention the need to discuss together, to work together, because on our own we cannot succeed. So let's go to Yvonne, then you, and then Priscilla, because she has also some online participants. Yvonne.
Yes, thank you very much. I just have a small intervention because you were talking about this link partnership between schools and enterprises, SMEs, and so on. I think this is really one of the really good aspects of our dual system we have in Switzerland. You know, because so we don't really have also this problem of the skills not matching. Because the enterprises are telling the schools what they need in form of skills. They can't, so there's a really strong partnership which makes that basically the students, when they're coming out of their apprenticeships, they have the skills they need in the economy. So yeah, there are other not so good aspects, but this is really one of the good aspects of this partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne, for that. We go back to Marta.
Okay, one thing to add. When I'm saying about creation of awareness, for example, in our country, Ethiopia, currently we are revising the TVET strategy. We are referring this wonderful UNESCO TVET strategy. So what I'm saying is that awareness for the implementation of this TVET strategy in all sectors area, not only on the member state or lower level family of TVET. Did all the family of TVET knows this strategy very well? Not only the member, most of the time the member state at higher level or the one who participate on the development of this strategy knows very well. But when you come to the implementers, the family, the trainers, the student, the college owners, private sectors, the industry, most of the time not know very well this strategy. I'm not saying the leaders or the ministry, we know it very well. For example, we are the one who participate on the development process, but the stakeholders should have to aware of this wonderful strategy for translating the system. The other thing, as you mentioned, we should not have to have a common strategy. No, I'm not saying that like that. Maybe countries have their own strategy and their own priority, but based on different countries' demand and interest, we have such wonderful strategies. So we can have a probability to make an action plan for the translating of this strategy in our country or in any other countries. That's I want to say.
Thank you for the clarifications on the importance of looking at the whole ecosystem of TVET and also on how to actually implement. So Priscilla, online questions or comments?
Actually, I don't have an online question. I just wanted to bring in an intervention and just to follow up on the discussion. So there was this participant asking what is the importance of strategy. And I just wanted to start by talking about the strategy really highlights the barriers and the important issues that need to be considered, which allow different partners to align their objectives in terms of initiatives and investment. So this allows you as a TVET institution that has barriers to connect with the right people because now everyone is aligned to those objectives. Regarding the other question about getting support for autism, So one aspect that I think, Isabel, you mentioned is working together. It's an important aspect that we don't take too much heed on, and this is about private and public partnership. So we find that by leveraging different partners who are working on autism, for example, you can really get a lot of input in terms of expertise and resource sharing and other activities that you need to do. So as UNESCO-UNEVOC, we've been working with Mauritius Institute of Training and Development. This is one of our UNEVOC center that is implementing a pilot project on bringing autistic children into the school and providing support that they need. So the way they are leveraging this is by using partnerships, and from this experience, we've actually learned that partnerships can offer more than enough that we didn't even know existed until you actually go out and talk to private sectors, you talk to NGOs that are working on these sectors. So for that participant, if you want to learn more, just write to us and then we can connect you to MITD to learn from what they did to get funding and other support. So that's it.
Thank you, Priscilla, for sharing that example. Any comments from here? Maybe those that have not contributed so far? Casimir?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for your comments. Obviously, those of you who don't know New Zealand, it's a small country in the bottom of Polynesia near Antarctica. But what of your comments, I guess, really relate, I guess, to our experience as well. That's something quite heartening for me. Because I guess in line to this strategy, I guess for me is a barrier is sometimes disengagement from countries. Because I think a lot of these discussions, I think the UNESCO strategy can provide the language and stuff to enable that. I think in our experience, it's a very fragmented education system. And I think we kind of lack the aspiration that the strategy can enable us to do, so it can start conversations. So that's one of my biggest frustrations. I think it's about our lack of engagement. But as Arno said, one of the other big challenges we've had is just changing the on-site culture of where the people go to train. That's the biggest one. In construction, this is one of the biggest things we're trying to do, is how can we change these organisational but workplace cultures. So that's really, really good. And I guess just some other things. Yeah, I think your comment as well, from stakeholders to shareholders, that really resonates with what we're trying to do. So that investment, I think, is quite critical. So just, yeah, so well done. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. It's really pleasing to hear.
Thank you, Casimir, for sharing your views as well. Other inputs?
So, more or less on the same vein of what Casimir is saying, I think that we have also to ask ourselves of the responsibility of industry in order to have attractive jobs for at that level, because one of the, I don't think this is not only the responsibility of that system that is a B strategy for students, but because also the access to labor market in many cases is on jobs which is not very attractive for the people. So I think there is an issue also on the side of working on making these jobs more attractive, more maybe well paid, and maybe trying to make it more catchy for the young generation in order to invest on communication, invest on technology, invest on security also in construction sites, for instance, or and so on and so forth. So there are some issues that are very connected with the attractivity of the VET system, which do not come from the VET system itself. It comes more from the industry, for the capacity of the different industry sectors to make attractive their jobs for intermediate professions. So I think this is what I wanted to add to the discussion. Yes, I come from France, from Serec.
So we have another comment by Yvonne, and then, sorry, I missed that, sorry.
Hello, my name is Hạnh. I'm from Vietnam and work for Koto No One Teach One. We are the social enterprise to support young and disadvantaged youth in Vietnam. For us, talking about the cultures and the challenges when we have the student, we care a lot about when we're building the training curriculum system where we have the holistic training programs. For us, it's not only vocational, we care a lot about the life personal development. So we, during the whole the programs, we have vocational, but we also do a lot of life skill training. We have a lot of activities in terms of giving back to the communities, like winter appeal. So that's kind of activities when we put in our system. So our expect to the student is, the 100% the program is free, but we expect them, and it's a whole journey of training. We talk a lot about give back to the communities, and we expect them to be a better person. But it's the most importantly that when you graduate from the programs is how you contribute to your families and the communities. So that is thing about, through the program, we talk a lot about how to build the cultures. It's not only vocational, but also a family atmosphere as well.
Thank you very much for your input, and I would like to mention that we'll look forward for Wednesday when we get to know more about the program, because it will be featured in the Learning Lab together with another program by Cometa. So the online participants that would like to know more about this program in Vietnam, Wednesday is the time to do that. So we go to Yvonne and then Anastasia.
Yeah, thank you very much. We were talking about the strategy to have one for every country, which is not possible, I guess. And I guess it's even contradictory to say, well, top down, you're going to have a strategy and that's how you should do it. So I guess it would be interesting to break it down to projects, to cooperation projects with organizations, institutions who would be interested in certain issues. For example, with the talking here about the spaces, but for example, I have a cooperation project where they try to adopt the TVET school to the new learning environment, how you learn. And it's not only about techniques, it's also about the interior and so on. So we also have common issues on new learning programs, micro-credentials, and so on and so on. So I guess that a strategy could be implemented by projects, common projects. I guess there would be something feasible and more bottom-up than top-down, which would make it more acceptable.
And also, I would say more measurable as well. You can measure that because you have projects. Yes. So, Anastasia.
Yeah, but it's very interesting to hear, from different contexts, like what is priority focus, and I would actually be keen on agreeing with most of what has been said. But I'm just reflecting because I'm looking at the two blue boxes in my screen, and especially on the barriers issue, for instance, how to really engage in like TVET institutions, architecture, spaces, timetables, and student groupings. This is indeed quite ambitious because in order to put all these different stakeholders together, it's not an easy task. And I like what you said, that the attention, like the detail is in the implementation, if I remember correctly. I would fully agree with that comment. I'm thinking about curricula, for instance, curriculum design. I think curriculum, like if we go to the education, the delivery side is a key element. Why? Because in essence, they want it is not just a pure design choice. It actually, curricula should reflect, let's say, the purposes for somebody learning that specific subject matter, for instance, in order to become employable. And I'm thinking, for instance, one thing is that we definitely need to put many bodies together, like students should be involved even in the design of the curricula. It's the teachers, the providers, it's the companies, it's the representatives of industry. So I think it should be definitely a joint effort. And then on the other hand, it's the content, what Dana mentioned before in this focus on transversal skills and competencies. It's not enough to know, let's say, the specific occupation expertise to acquire this occupational knowledge, but more is needed now to have more skills, transversal skills and competencies, and these should be reflected in the curriculum. So one thing is the strategy, right, which is a more of a higher level, but then how do you really put it in practice, and how do you engage the different bodies? This is a real challenge. And then, because you mentioned, like, can we have like one strategy, one common, I mean, always, and I see it also in Europe, like you have the European priorities, you have European processes, but at the very end, it's at the national level, at the national context that things really happen. And they might not be the same, one country so different from the other. And this is very okay. Even when you are going to develop a strategy in UNESCO, still the country's specificities and diversities are so important. Of course, you know it, and I'm sure we are in the same line of thinking. Just, yeah, in our efforts of having some joint actions, we always need to consider the challenges at a national level. Yeah, but I would be very, I mean, the reflections shared by speakers are so useful in that sense. And thank you.
Yeah. Oh.
Very insightful so far. I have something that I would like to reflect upon, which says that we should, it's not just one strategy for the learner. It has to involve the whole society. So when we look at this, I'm sure some other groups are probably looking at it from multiple perspectives, maybe. Because if it's just the learner, then the whole ecosystem is not taken into account. So I think that's one thing that you might want to rephrase your question. And number two, when we look at the ASEAN, this morning we had ASEAN, and then we have probably EU. For us, in Malaysia, I'm Cordelia from Malaysia. We actually have one thing in our university. I'm from University Kuala Lumpur. We claim to be the leading higher TVET institution, but there's so much confusion on what is TVET, what is higher TVET, and I've been tasked actually to, what's the definition of TVET? So I said, being pro UNESCO, I would say, think we should look at this, because this definition would be very well thought out, just like what we're doing is not something that comes in a day. So we actually are trying to force that kind of acceptance of what UNESCO has done. And going back through all the reflection today, then we are talking about country-specific, national as well as at the TVET level. So given that scenario, there's a lot of trust in UNESCO and UNEVOC. So I think it's got to us very huge questions when it comes to strategy. And then only we probably can operationalize them according to the national system. So I think all the workshops, projects, it would provide very rich data and experiences into this whole process, which I think is continuous. So thank you very much for this.
It's good when you mentioned that UNESCO-UNEVOC is trusted, and of course we hope that this trust translates into cooperations which make a difference. So that's ultimately what we are after, not just these documents. So Dana had a reply.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a remark when I heard Anastasia talking about how many strategies should we have, how we do it in Romania. I think it's a very interesting concept, and it was very successful. We call it multi-level strategic planning. And this means that we start from the highest strategy, which would be UNESCO strategy and EU recommendations. That is at the top. And then we look at those, we develop the national strategy, but we don't stop here. We have a regional strategy. Romania has 8 regions. Romania has 20 million inhabitants, so that you know the size. It's a medium-sized Central European country. So we have highest level, which is UNESCO, EU, we are a EU country. Then we have the national strategy. But then, and we adapt at the national level the higher level. Then we go to the regions, and the regions have a structure that build regional strategy on midterm, 5 years. And the regional strategy looks at the higher level strategies, but they also adapt them and make their own. Then we have the county level. We have 42 counties in Romania, and we have for each county a strategy of its own, because at local level, there is a specific needs that have to be addressed. So you look at higher level, but you also adapt them. And then the last level is a school level. We have a strategic plan for school. And what we actually do is we go top down and bottom up, because when we also monitor how these strategies are operationalized, the upper level goes and monitors the lower level. So there is some kind of information that goes up and down from up. And I think it's quite relevant how we are doing, because it's been quite successful, and we have tried to present and support other countries in doing this kind of multi-level strategic approach, which was quite successful in our case.
Thank you, Dana, for that. Yes, yes. I think we can have, do we have more online participants? Because just one. So Matteo, the very last one, and then we start concluding.
Very quickly about this last comment from Romania, which is interesting, because if I look to the country where I live, in France, so you have a lot of different level of governance, but they are not coherent at all in the way that you are describing, because there are some conflict at different level of governance, and maybe and inconsistencies if you look to the spectrum from the national to the local. So this is the point, how to organize all these policies is very challenging, because you have a political conflict between the different levels. We have incoherencies and inconsistencies everywhere, and people do double the same activities at different governance levels. So it's not so. It's quite challenging. So it's not so easy to organize this all coherent approach that you describe. At least for France, it's one of the problems.
Thank you, Matteo, for bringing that perspective. So we go to Priscilla.
So we have one last intervention from El Cid Castillo, who is saying the changing landscape of the labor market presents significant challenges and opportunities in TVET. Emerging industries and occupations continue to challenge TVET institutions to adopt and meet the challenging demands of the labor market. To address this, we need to be proactive. We need a proactive engagement and strong collaboration with industry stakeholders, review and improve our curricula, and align with what the industry needs, and commit to innovation and lifelong learning.
Thank you very much, El Cid, for that comment. And I think it is time to start concluding. Natalie has prepared a very nice summary, but I would like to mention something before that. You also referred once again to the involvement of students. And just after our session here, I was talking to Arno, and I was saying, thank you for coming. That was a nice discussion that you had. And his reply was, I hope that something changes. And it's up to us to make these changes happening. Because we can talk a lot about student-centered learning. If we are not involving the students in the decision-making, then I think we are not doing enough. So let's make our efforts so that we prove, Arno, that you are making a difference, thanks also to the support of the others. So I leave it up to Natalie to start concluding.
Okay, let me try to keep it brief, because I know you're all hungry, at least I am. So let me start with the barriers, and I'm actually quite happy that at least the barriers don't outnumber the enabling conditions and the opportunities. So it's visually not attractive, I apologize. It's purely functional, and I tried to sort it a bit. So we touched upon aspects at the policy level. Just the latest comment from Matteo, I think, was very to the point about this conflict of interest between different levels of governance. But also other aspects that could be resolved at the policy level, like permeability between the levels, education, further down, of course, the curricular design. We have the aspect of funding, as always, but I think it's important that we heard both about that funding should be public and private, and we talked a lot about the role of industry and taking more ownership. Of course, teachers and trainers was also a topic among the barriers, that there needs to be done more to improve their capacities, especially also with regards to inclusion in the classroom. And there was one comment, I don't remember who it was, but I noted down teachers should learn from the students' experience. And we will have one nice breakout session on the last day run by Cometa about students or learners' experience in trainer and teacher education. So it can be a continuation of this point. And of course, we talked about reputation. And again, I thought an interesting extension of this always recurring topic, the bad reputation of TVET, is the bad reputation of jobs that come afterwards, and the payment and the working conditions and so on. So, but let me put up the enabling conditions. Just a second. So there's more green than red. I also tried to sort it a bit. So there was a lot about industry and employment and a lot of opportunities there, and that, the role of industry in TVET should be, or is already and can be an enabling factor in the TVET system. So we had this business case perspective, the importance of data. I also captured here, aligning TVET policy priorities with employment strategies. And I liked also this reverse relationship, preparing students for the industry, but also preparing the industry for the students. So it's not a one-way street. We again have some post-its on policy. So I think one interesting example, it was Dana, I think, about streamlining the ministerial responsibilities. We can actually see that in many countries around the world, and also streamlining the qualifications framework within a country. I will not read out all of this. Again, we have permeability as an opportunity, of course. Teachers and trainers. Once again, we heard about programs for vet school management that were publicly funded, and the importance of frequent and regular training of trainers. What I found really strong is the role of society, so not just to look at TVET in the context of education, but really in a much broader perspective. And lastly, I know I have this little section which I called homework, and it also takes me to my closing comments. So it was about creating more awareness of the TVET strategy, really among all stakeholders, not only at our network, in our network context, basically. Understanding better, also from our end, the alignment of national policies with the UNESCO TVET strategy. And I marked down also what is our role in implementation or in supporting implementation. Do we also exclude? So, yeah, it's a critical question, but I think we have to take it. And yeah, with this, I will wrap up the summary. So I really want to thank you all. We will take this input into our work, not only for the BILT project, but also at UNESCO-UNEVOC. I think it will help us in better prioritizing our activities. We have a survey coming up to our network members, which will, I'm sure some of this will feed into the drafting of this survey. So it will really, not just go into the drawer. Thanks a lot. I also want to thank our online participants for putting up your comments, your questions, and for coming back after the coffee break. Very courageous and loyal. And I hope you come back tomorrow for the online participants at 9 a.m. CEST. We really try without technical issues tomorrow. So see you then. Thank you.